To call this special meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all for joining us this evening. We have Jewel and Lucas and I in attendance here, and we have Lloyd and DJ coming in via Zoom. Oops. Okay. And before we begin our meeting, I'm going to have Brian do a brief remembrance for us.
Thank you, Kaplan. So most of our community is pretty familiar with board member Melissa Maceda, not only because of her time here on the governing board, but because for many, many years before that, she served as one of our super parents in schools in which her children attended. Tragically, Melissa lost her husband, Tom, last Tuesday after a 9-10 month struggle against cancer. And we wanted to make sure that we paused tonight to remember Tom, to let Melissa and her 4 wonderful kids and their extended family know that we remember Tom, that we always will, that we mourn with her and her family, and that we will support them in every way that we possibly can. The Macedas have been blessed since Tom's diagnosis with more love and care and meals and support. Actually, they've reaped what they have sown, quite honestly. And now at this, this intense time of grief and loss, we just wanted to remember Tom and the Macedas and pledge our ongoing support to them. So just take a moment to remember Tom, please. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Brian. Okay, notice to the public, if you would like to speak to an agenda item, you may let us know at this time. While the written request is optional and hard to do because you're on Zoom, we will recognize you in the order that we understand you want to speak. So let's see, is there any public comment on an item not on our agenda? All right, seeing none, I am going to move to our agenda item, which is COVID funding and planning for the 2021-22 school year, information, discussion and action items.
Great, thank you, Kaplan. So just to lay the background for tonight's meeting, at our regular meeting last week, no, 2 weeks ago, yeah, we had a 5 Thursday month. So it was 2 weeks ago, and we discussed the need to have a meeting just targeting our planning for next school year and the use of our COVID funding. So we're gonna present a couple things, survey data that we have been collecting over the last week and a half, that finished up yesterday. We're going to talk briefly about, Monique will just very briefly review the funding that we're receiving and timeline for its use. We will highlight then with Mr. Giramonti an awful lot of the work that we've been doing in terms of generating ideas and proposals, and how that specifically how that integrates with our LCAP development as well. So with no further ado, I am going to tell you that our district goals are established through our LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan. And we have 3 goals that we have established. Goal 1 is that we prepare our students for college career and success in a global society. It's basically that our children are going to learn and be skilled. Goal 2, that we engage all of our students in social, emotional, and behavioral learning that helps them be safe and healthy, and that our schools are culturally responsive and inclusive of everyone. And goal 3 is that we engage our families and the community to form active partnerships and ensure the growth of our kids. Mark, if you don't mind, I forgot I was going to share this. If you don't mind giving me that access, please.
Should be there.
Thank you. I see it. Sorry about that. As we develop these goals, we talked an awful lot about some of the key ingredients in being able to meet them. And so the LCAP advisory group adopted these 3 guiding principles to kind of be the means to make sure that those goals are pursued and met. So we will meet none of our goals without a high quality staff. We will meet none of our goals if we don't allocate and manage our resources wisely and targeted towards our mission. And we will meet none of our goals if we don't use best practices and follow what makes sense and not what looks bright and shiny or any of those types of things. Research-based everywhere that we can. So right now we're in this place of we've got our goals, plus what? Here in the short term, our goals and the actions and services that are in the LCAP to support meeting them are not going to change. Over time they will, but we are well into LCAP season, and we'll be bringing it to the board in the first meeting in June for the public hearing. So we have those goals, but we also know that COVID has presented us with all sorts of new challenges. And our obligation right now, with all of the funding we're receiving, is to plan to address those challenges that our students and our families and our staff have experienced. So I'm going to invite Monique in for a moment to just talk about these next 2 slides on the funding. Monique.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. This is a review of information we shared when we were together last time, and it reviews the variety of sources of COVID-related funding that our district has received or will receive. It reviews the different types of funding under the COVID-19 funding, the allocation, meaning how much money we're getting, and how much we anticipate we will have at the end of this fiscal year and beginning July 1, and the variety of deadlines. Beginning July 1, we anticipate that we'll have about 10.6 million. On the next slide, if you can go to the next slide, please. We'd like to quickly review the deadlines associated with this 10.6 million. By the end of next school year, we need to expend about 3 million of those dollars. Within a couple months after that, we need to expend a little more, maybe about a little over 300,000. And then we have a year to spend another 2 million. And by the end of 2024, we need to have expended our entire 10.6 million. Key points with this money, just as reminders, this is all one-time funding. We do not anticipate that we will get this funding again. And it's always important to remember that with one-time funding in the CBO world, we say we don't want to spend money on ongoing activities or people that eat. We want to make sure that when we are looking at the different programs that we want to use this funding for, that we clearly identify what the end date will be for this program, or how we will be able to sustain the program with our general funding. What questions do you have?
Are there any board questions? Any board questions on DJ or Lloyd? No? Okay, I'm going to open for some public comment on this item. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any public comment either, Monique, so it looks like no questions.
You're done.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I want to transition into discussing our surveys. And what I've done on this page is combine the results for both the family survey that we sent out and the staff survey. So each of the items is there in the middle of the column, and I just want to run through these quickly. I'll also talk a little bit about some of the information we obtained from our students as well. We had about 40% of our families participate in that survey. That was 772 family responses out of 1,900, or right about there. And we had 178 staff responses out of about 300. So decent participation levels, but not fantastic participation levels, I think. And what I captured tonight is just the percentages of people who said the item was very important or important. And I'll just start by saying that most everything that we asked about on the survey came across as important, not surprising. And so you won't see too many low numbers here. You will see some that are very high, and then you will see some that are a little bit more mixed. So the first item, adding time to the school day. So the idea of this is making up for lost instructional time. And so as an example, you could add 30 minutes to a school day at, let's just say elementary right now. And a school would just be 30 minutes longer than our current bell schedules, our current regular bell schedules, not the distance learning schedules. Throw those out for next year. So 56.4% of families were interested in that, just 22% of staff. Adding days to the school year is another thing that is encouraged for consideration along with the receipt of these dollars. So 36.6 and 18%. So I think really pretty clearly the idea of days to the school year is not attractive to anybody. You do have a majority, at least, of family responses saying longer days. Adding paraprofessionals to the classrooms. So some people may be more familiar with these as instructional assistants that received high level of support, just about 82% and almost 88% between families and then staff. Providing intervention within the school day, very high numbers again, over 86% for families, over 89% for staff. After school tutoring, also very popular, at 81% for families and almost 89% for staff. Academic enrichment within the school day. So we have intervention of just a couple of rows, and the enrichment piece came in just under 57% for our families and at 81% for our staff. Credit recovery was viewed as pretty high importance from the perspective of both our families and our staff. You can see 78.9 and 78.7. Assessments of students. So the full wording on this was assessing students to see really kind of their current status with regards to knowledge and skills, kind of getting a benchmark here as they come back to school in the fall. So 78% of families supported that idea, just 50% of staff. Again, very important or important. We asked a question about professional development. 71.5% of families and 62.9% of staff said, again, very important or important for staff to be trained in response to students' needs, especially this kind of focused on academic issues. The single highest percentage for both families and staff were suicide prevention programs at 89.1 and 91%. And close behind were the increased mental health supports for students, 86.5% for families and 88.8% for staff. So again, very high numbers. The school-wide programs to build positive climate, PBIS is what we call those for short. Try to stay away from the acronym, PBIS even being positive behavior intervention and support. So there was a widespread interest in seeing us provide those. The extracurricular activities came through very highly again with families, a little less so with staff. Using our parent liaisons to increase outreach. One of the lower responses overall at 68.4 for families, 65.1 for staff. Some parent family education on supporting children, technology, academic support, behavior, things of that nature. You can see pretty close at 68.4 and 65.1. Parent and family education. Oh, I just did that one, sorry. Sorry, those were 79.6 and 75.7. And then we've been talking about a two-way bilingual immersion program, and that came in pretty close, 59.1 and 61.9. So we had a couple things that appeared either just in the family or just in the staff. So community building activities were in the family survey, and those are pretty popular at 62.7. And I will say in the town hall meeting for the elementary families that we held, there was a lot of conversation about community building and the interest to get people back together and reestablish identity at the school. For families, 80% of them, important, very important with regards to computers and devices for kids. 69%, still a really high number, needing, indicating the importance of internet access for families at home. 73% with healthier, improved school meals, and just about 57%. And again, we had a better description in this. We've been talking about the non-classroom based program for families that did not want to return to in-person, and that was just about 57%. And a few things we asked staff that weren't included for families. Just over 74% of staff said important, very important for them to get professional development on how to assist students with mental health issues, how to support kids. Almost the same percentage, 74.7, mental health support for staff themselves. A little over 66, training on technology for instruction. We asked a couple operational things for staff. You can see 63% and change, both for adding some additional office staff and adding additional maintenance and operations staff across the district. So that's the grown-ups. We did ask questions of our students as well in the secondary level. And unfortunately, our sample size did not get to the place that I was expecting. So this is based on 440 responses, some from John Knight, some from Dixon High, and some from Maine Prairie. And there's a couple of really glaring questions and responses here. So the first one, overall, after all the time school was closed and you were in distance learning, 58% of our students who responded said they have fallen behind academically. 31.6, about the same, and 10% actually feel that they advanced in that time. So we can say 6 out of 10 of our kids feel that they lost ground academically. And this shows a variety of the things that students said that they viewed as services or supports that they would embrace. So before school tutoring, people want to sleep in quite a bit, looks like. After school tutoring, online homework help were both popular at 31 and 36.5%. These are cut off a little bit the way this report ran. A unique class period for catching up was pretty popular, just short of 40%. Saturday school, not too big at 8%. English learners, I think that was mostly due to a small sample there. Repeating a class that you had a low grade in, so you passed the class, but let's say you had a D and you wanted to still try to get to a 4-year school. Credit recovery, very significant there at 34.5%. Smaller class size, and summer school were the last ones there. Okay, so we got a little sample of what kids think was important. Big question about social emotional well-being, mental health. So 59.9% 0.4% of our students said their well-being has worsened over the time of the closure. 37 saying that it's the same, and 10% saying that it had improved. So 59% of our students have said that academically they lost ground, and in terms of their social emotional well-being, they saw things regress. So ask them, what are the things that should be offered to students? And not surprisingly, counseling, just a cool off space, and training teachers and other staff to be more effective in supporting them, all came in over 50%. Group counseling, a little bit under 25%. That's a tough sell for people of all ages, actually. And then the idea of just having the opportunity to have informal conversations with a staff member that they trust at 35, just about 35.5%, a pretty significant number. And we asked this question as a follow-up. If students have someone on campus they feel comfortable talking to, if they felt that need. And so 56.5% of our kids said yes at this point in time. There's actually an encouraging number. I wish it were 100%, but the fact that we're just coming back into in person, and a lot of students haven't been on campus since March 13th of last year, that 56.5% was encouraging. Half of our kids said they had a hard time attending class every day. And they said the reasons, and they can identify more than one, obviously, that 50% of the kids said that it was because they felt down or anxious or stressed. You've got 30% with illness. A little over 10% had work obligations. 27% of them said they missed school to take care of siblings or others in their home. That whole sense of responsibility. And then 6% assisting parents with other things, like when mom or dad needed translation help and things like that. And then we asked a question about extracurriculars. And you can see that it's about 54% overall of students said they were very interested or interested. And 22.8% said not interested at all. We're curious about these numbers, and you see the somewhat interested there as well. Curious about these numbers because they seem lower than what we normally expect. But we're wondering if just the absence and the lack of ability to participate in these has students maybe questioning a little bit, am I really going to do that again or not? And we would hope that we would. So not a wild embrace, interestingly enough, of the extracurriculars here with our students. So that's our survey data being quick, and I'm happy to answer any questions. For the board's benefit, I did provide you here this evening with the surveys and all the written comments as well. Those are hot off the presses just this afternoon as we were able to assemble all of those. And my encouragement is to read all those while we pause the meeting, and then I don't think that would be wise, but just before our next meeting, if you can work your way through those. What you have here is the summary data. I think the great value in what I've given you tonight are the comments, the opportunity to read all the written comments. There's a substantial amount of them. So
I have a
anyway, I'll
question.
take any questions? Yes, somebody had that. Mr. Bowen.
EJ, go ahead.
Can you remind me what the staff numbers for participation were?
So we had 178 out of just about 300.
And then can you email me the comments? Because I don't think I can come get it.
We've got that.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get those. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can. We'll email. Actually, I have printed copies as well. I'll drop them on the porch and run.
The sight of you running away from my house is a good sight I can envision, so that's good.
All right, Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm interested in is you go back to the immersion program.
Mhm.
Is that we've been thinking about that as, since neighboring school districts have that's something that we could attract students to. And it doesn't seem that anybody's too excited about it. You have a little over half of the parents and almost the same number of teachers, so.
Yeah,
doesn't
I'll-
seem that's
Yeah,
odd.
and as we move into our next stage here, looking at some of the proposals and such, when you do political polling, so my only experience with it as a school bond, kind of your first question is, hey, would you support a bond to modernize schools? And you get an answer, and then you say, if the modernization of schools included, ding, 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 then the numbers begin to go up. So this is a very limited description of the program here. So I think as you talk to the community and staff about what's involved in this, then the interest in it would grow significantly.
Well, and I also think when you look at this, you have to realize that we're looking at all parents for all students, of all ages.
Yes.
And really, we'd only be offering it to elementary. So if I was a high school parent answering this, I would say, no, I'm not interested in two-way bilingual immersion,
Mhm.
right? Because we're not even gonna offer it, and that's not something that my high schooler would have, benefited from, right? Starting in high school. And so I think you have to sort of factor that in. I actually thought 60% was a pretty reasonable
I
number.
did too, yeah.
For, 6 and 10 people, considering the whole pool of people we're looking at. But I would like to see a little more,
Yeah.
drilling down a little more on that eventually, yeah.
You bet. We have not disaggregated like by a grade level or anything like that yet, so that will tell us some more. We just haven't had the time to sit with the data yet.
The written comments, that's only upperclassmen, right?
That is, so I don't know exactly who completed, so any student who made comments, that's what that reflects. Some kids identify themselves like,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, and you don't, the student reports are really funky right now. We're trying to get those worked out. So
Very,
they're-
very helpful though.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah, good.
I think one of the things that strikes me is this mental health component,
Yeah.
that students and staff and parents all identify this as a need.
Yeah.
And that really strikes me. I think that's the one thing everybody's on the same page around.
Yeah. It's the number one. I'm looking through all of this
Yeah.
and you can't go reading 3 of them. You can't go without seeing mental health on here the entire time. So,
Yeah.
and they even have suggestions, like one of them that I really like is the safe place on campus for students who feel overwhelmed. I think just opening up one of the empty classrooms to just at any time, no penalty, just let the kid come in and just be themselves for a little bit and then return back to class.
Other questions about the survey? Otherwise, Mr. Giramani is going to start to share a document in which we talk about proposals, that we talk about things. Actually, I'll change that up a little bit. Some of them are proposals. Some of them are things that we're already doing.
All right, since we're, this is just the one,
Oh,
item,
we
I'm gonna
should-
open one more time
Yeah,
for public
thank you.
comment on just this section. I just want to see if there's anybody who has a comment, just looking, knowing what we know now and a little bit of this broader data. Does anybody want to comment on that in the public? All right, seeing that, we will move on to Mr. Giramonte's presentation.
All right. And we're going to tag team this, so you don't have to listen to either one of us for too long. It'll be too long combined, but
We'll try and keep things moving. So what I'd like to do actually is I'm going to share my screen here in a moment, but the document that the board has a hard copy of, or most of the board that's here has a hard copy of, Mark's going to open the chat and I'm going to go ahead and put the doc in.
you don't have a hard copy of this one.
It's
Sorry.
going to be, oh, they don't have a hard copy. I apologize.
No,
Um,
sorry.
Now everyone should be able, it's going to do what's called a forced copy. I'm seeing some faces in there. So people are able to get in there,
Okay, yeah.
looks like.
Got it.
All right, I'm looking for somebody who's not on campus or out of campus to get there. Okay, good. We're all getting in there. Great. And then Mark's going to shut the chat here in just a minute or so. Great. So we're going to go ahead and share screen now.
No, Nick, just before you start doing that, I think it's important. to describe how we view approaching funding.
Oh,
Here.
yeah. Oh,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I just flashed on it, so.
Go ahead.
You're going to see as we go through these pages that some of the actions and services are very specific to a school site or a particular program, and others of them are more global across the entire district. So we're thinking about funding the actions and services in two different ways. One is the way, such as we do right now with our supplemental concentration grant funds through the LCAP, is that we spread those across the services in the district. No site gets an allocation of SCG funds unless it is in a specific little window, like for PBIS support with gifts and tokens and things of that nature. So kind of the traditional organized directed spending by the district. Other thing that we intend to do is actually to create the best term that we have for them right now are block grants to give to each school site, where they would have the ability to fund some of the smaller initiatives or actions or services that they would like, that they have proposed to us at this point in time. So if I want to buy underwater basket weaving kits as an art and craft activity, we're not going to put that in our LCAP. We're going to kick that back to the site with all the other things they would like to do and asking them to allocate their funds for those things. So we're going to have a formula, which we are still kind of figuring out exactly how we want that to work, but a per student formula that will be distributed out to the sites for them to be able to expend on the things that are priorities at each site. So differences by level, differences by the climate and culture at each school, programs, etc. So as we talk through this, some of the things we'll say is that's something that we're going to do at the site level. Other things you'll clearly see are more under the whole wide district umbrella. So, all right, Mr. Jeremiah, take it away.
Okay, thanks everybody. So Mark, good job disabling that chat. I know he was very anxious about that, so we're good to go. So real quick, I want to go ahead and just talk about how this document works. So you'll notice here that we have our first goal, so goal 1 for our LCAP for next year and beyond, which is that we'll engage all students in standards-aligned, rigorous curriculum and learning that ensures preparation for college, career, and success in a global society. So goal 1 is what we call our student academic achievement goal, to sort of shorten that. Goal 2 is going to talk about our, let's engage all students in social, emotional, and behavioral learning, which ensures safe, healthy, and culturally responsive schools. So our social emotional health, goal, if you want to call it that. And lastly, it's engaging families and community and form active partnerships, which ensure the academic and social growth of students. So 3 very broad goals. So as I go through the first goal here, we just had a conversation and many people astutely pointed out that sorry, there's something wrong with my mouse. It's shaking around. Oh, I realize I'm not sharing my screen. Here we go. So as we go through these, for example, in goal 1, you're not going to see much that relates directly to mental health, for example. Wait for it, that's coming in goal 2. The other thing we want to talk about, as we work through this process and as we get closer to needing to have our plan completed, we want to be able to really start to identify those things that we feel like we can press go on based on stakeholder input that we've had, based on the data that we have, based on past practice, best practice, et cetera. And so what we've identified at this point that we're recommending as we want to move forward with are in this green column. And we'll go through all of those items as we go. The yellow column are proposed actions and services for the goal under which it's located that we're still talking about. This doesn't necessarily mean that we're anti or pro or any of those things, but we really want some more feedback from the board and from stakeholders as far as what their thoughts are on these. So our hope tonight is actually that we spend most of our time in this yellow column. Lastly is the red column. And these are things, and this is not to say that any of these are bad ideas, but again, based on based on the stakeholder input needs, what we know as best practices. These are things that right now we're not recommending moving forward with. Again, we'll go over those and talk through those as needed. Our goal though tonight is again to spend as much time as possible in the yellow. Not necessarily, and if the board desires and they want to move something into the red or the green column, please just let us know and we'll execute that change tonight. So I'm going to go do goal 1, and I'm going to start by just reviewing the different pieces in each of the columns, and I'll try and do this as efficiently as possible. I don't know if you guys want to stop and ask me as we go. I think it's probably best to wait till the end, but I'll take my direction from the president on that.
Yeah, we'll just wait till the end. I think that's fine.
Okay, great. So first up, to continue and expand our elementary intervention program to include additional reading and math interventions for students. We've heard this as a need from many different folks. It's a reasonable expense out of our pots of money and feels like what we need to do. The next one is to expand our secondary credit recovery to cast a broader net to be proactive, not reactive. Right now, credit recovery is limited to students at Main Prairie High School, or typically, with some exceptions, juniors and or seniors at Dixon High School. But we want to be more proactive on this, catch kids earlier so we get them credit whole moving forward. We also think that we'll have a higher need based on some of the results from distance learning this year. The next one is adopt and implement a new K-12 student assessment system to better meet the instructional needs. Included will be a shift.
What's wrong, Nico? What's wrong?
Gabby, I think you want to mute. Okay. Included will be a shift to a more data-focused approach to first instruction intervention programs. Next is implementing English language development program at MPHS. Our program at Main Prairie right now for English learners is very, very limited. You could even argue non-existent. So implementing a program there that's ethically the right thing to do, but also a compliance piece as well. Another one is create an elementary dual immersion program. Pardon me, I neglected to finish the sentence here. This is not for next year. We know that we will not be able to get this program up and running next year, but the planning for this would happen next year with a goal to implement in 22-23. Again, this is based on board feedback, community feedback, et cetera. One that we know we're already doing is increasing our summer school options for sure this summer with the possibility of 2022. We know we're going to do an hourly rate increase as well for all staff who participate. Instructional technology, hardware, software, and support to build on the momentum we've had from this year. We are recommending at this point a move at Main Prairie High School to the C.A. Jacobs campus to enable more robust elective programs and properly equipped classrooms for our kids. Expanding our middle school elective programs so all students have access to these programs. This would be an implementation for 22-23 with a planning year next year. Paraprofessional PD, especially around ELA, ELD, and other core areas like mathematics. Fund 0.5 of our assistant principal positions at DHS and John Knight Middle to support the academic program with particular focus on English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and homeless foster youth. Increase the full-time employment so that FTE, sorry for those of you who don't do this all day long, FTE means that we just hire more people or expand hours. So increase FTE of paraprofessionals in the general education program with a special focus on ensuring primary students have support in reading and basic math skills. Right now, our paraprofessionals are for the most part limited to our special education program. This would bring in paraprofessionals to work in our gen ed program as well. And last for this goal in the green column is create and implement a non-classroom based option for students and families. So this is for our families and students who want to continue in some sort of alternative program, based on their experience from this year. So I'll go on.
I'm worried that if you go on, I'm gonna forget what I want to say.
You are
also. I turn my camera off because I'm putting the iPad really close to my face because I'm trying to focus. You don't want to see my face this close. Two things that came to my mind off top. I might think of something else, but on number one, the very first one is that meaning specifically during the school day, or is that all of the above, before, during, and after? What did you have in mind?
That one is specific to in the school day.
Okay.
Well,
I think that's probably the
With-
best
with-
means.
yeah, yes. So
'Cause it makes it less optional, basically.
yes. So that's the
Yes.
way we operate it now, and we would anticipate a version of that. When we get into the yellow column, there's a possibility of expand, and as you saw in the surveys, there's a possibility of expanding, expanding the school day. And it's possible this would happen during that time as well, but that would still include all students and technically be within the school day. So yes, within the school day.
Okay, and then the other one was, can you scroll down where it said middle school
absolutely.
electives?
Yes.
Can I make a request? You could deny my request if you'd like, but maybe other board members get feedback. I would like to request where it says expand middle school elective programs so all students have access to programs. Can I specify CTE in there, career and technical education? Because we have a really robust program at Dixon and I at DHS, sorry. And I don't, I think that it would be nice if kids had some experience with CTE and all the offerings that are fit within that umbrella and would be exposed to it at an earlier age and could succeed at a higher level at Dixon High School if they could see it at a middle school level.
I'll grab that one, Nick.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the intent at the site, DJ, is to include, is to consider all options. So Spanish language is one, more in the arts is another one, CTE is one. So I think they really want to engage this staff and families in a process of, brainstorming and evaluating and seeing what ultimately makes the most sense for the population over there. This is an issue that really we need to move from having a 6-period day to having a 7-period day to be able to do this, which will, the planning part might honestly be the easy part of this process because it would require negotiations as we currently have a 6-period workday. So I don't think I don't think we were specific about any particular area here in that consideration of electives, but CTE is certainly one of them.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to at least express my interest in CTE programs, I guess then.
Thank you.
But the real win here, DJ, and for everybody else is, if suddenly you have a lot more kids who can take elective classes, you can expand to different areas like CTE or others. So, shall I go into the yellow column?
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So again, yellow column, things under consideration. Brian, does it make more sense to jump to red first and then come back to yellow since I want to spend our time, or should we go in order?
Let's go in order, please.
Okay. So ideas we've heard, some of these from single stakeholder groups, others come from multiple stakeholder groups. Expand class size reduction to include secondary math classes to improve differentiated instruction. This would be at potentially at Dixon High School and John Day Middle. 4th and 5th grade class size reduction. Sorry about the acronym CSR, stands for class size reduction. Just for everyone who's listening, we currently have class size reduction, so 24-to-1 in grades TK through 3, which is a state sponsored program. 4th and 5th grade goes to our regular staffing ratio. That's the district-wide staffing ratio. We'd be looking to expand tutoring opportunities at DHS and JKMS to include before and after school programs. Currently, for reference, we have an after school program at Dixon High School only, with some limited tutoring happening at CAJ, the artist formerly known as CAJ last year, but something more formal. Expand hours for elementary grades to mitigate lost instructional time from 2019-20 to 2020-21. So what this would mean is more time, more minutes for our kids is what this one is really saying. Expand our ELD program to TK. Right now, based on staffing, we're not able to serve our TK kids with EL and not very much EL. Explore expansion of secondary intervention programs that are integrated. We don't have many of those right now at secondary. Incorporation of an ethnic studies framework. So this is one that's become, was just passed to the State Board of Education, I believe at March, the new framework. And so finding ways to incorporate that. A lot of school districts locally and across the state have done ethnic studies courses. Some districts have made it a graduation requirement. You can incorporate that framework in a number of different ways. Doesn't need to be a course, but just the incorporation of that. This next one is an academic counselor for At Promise Youth. And this, those of you who've been paying attention to the LCAP world for a long time, the conversation around expanding counseling for students has long been there. Really, the idea here is still, I'd say we're in early development of it. Adrian Lauder, our PPS coordinator, has taken a crack at writing this up. But the general idea is that we identify early our At Promise students who are struggling in our system earlier on in their secondary experience to try and get them the support they need to make it through middle school ready to get to high school. And once they get to high school, really make it through that first and second year of high school credit hole, so that they're much more likely than to one, graduate from high school, two, graduate what we call college and career ready. If they do choose to attend our alternative site as well, maybe they're doing it not because of credit deficiency reasons, but because of programmatic reasons, or if they are doing it for credit deficiency reasons, they're not in such a credit hole that they don't have any chance of graduating. So this is an idea to do that. Kind of envisioned as a wraparound services for kids, working with families, improving attendance, building those academic skills, etc. This would not replace any of our current counseling services, but be seen as a supplemental with a really targeted model at our students who are at Promise. Next is continuing our secondary integrated ELD professional development, or Constructing Meaning is the name of the program. We're year one this year. It's been received really positively thus far, but looking to expand that. Next is additional staff to improve training and coaching in the application of instructional technology, devices, and platforms. The idea here would be actually to get some staff at school sites. Right now we do have a Tech-TOSA who is doing a great job, but looking actually to maybe get some staff closer to the actual, at school sites. We're not thinking this is a full-time position, maybe a stipended position or a timesheet position, however that might look, to be able to provide some training more locally. And lastly, in this column is explore and invest in integrated enrichment activities for all elementary students, like art, like music, field trips, etc. And do you want me to stop again for board comments or questions on this, or just go on to red?
Yes, ready to go into red?
Mhm.
Yeah, let's go into red.
Okay. And so these are the ones that we're just not, we're not at the point where we feel like we can move forward with these at this point. Some of them are logistical, doesn't mean that they're bad ideas, or they're just not in line with what we think are best practices or with what our community is asking for. So the top one here is expanded school year. We saw from the survey, this is just a non-starter for our families, for our staff, not looking to do that. Expand coaching to include elementary English language arts. This is one that I think actually could be a really positive one for us, but it's not something that we can get behind for next year, just based on other priorities that we have coming down the pike. Intensive immersion programs for academics to help kids get back up what they lost, like a double block of math, ELA at schools. Just not getting a lot of positive feedback on this from stakeholders. And it would, in the end, actually really limit our kids' ability to be able to take some of our really cool elective programs. Maintaining elective staffing to meet kids where they are. Essentially, this one's asking that we dip below or significantly below our staffing ratios to be able to keep whole some of our elective programs, and that's not something that we're able to recommend at this time. So this is one that I did bring to the board a while ago, and this is about expanding our TK program to include all TK eligible kids. And this, honestly, right now for us is a capacity issue. Getting this up and running with all the needs that we have, while I still think is a good idea, is not something we'll recommend for next year. It's something we think we can explore in the following year, but not for next year. A recommendation that was made by one group was to expand athletic director time to increase connections between academics and athletics. Not in the list for us right now. Unifying our elementary ELA adoption. Right now we have our K1 program is a different textbook than our 2-5 program. We've talked about this. I personally think it's a good idea to do at some point, but again, just with all the things that we got to do next year, not something that's tenable. And finally, additional FTE to ensure no combo classes at elementary program. We know that combo classes are not ideal, but that's not something we feel is our best investment at this point. And that's it for goal 1 for now. I'm sure that there will be other ideas that come down the pike as we move through this process, but that's where we are with those. So I'll take board comment and
Yeah,
community
any
comment.
board comments or questions on goal 1?
I realize I'm raising my hand with my camera off, so that just proves where I'm at right now. Friday's tomorrow, yay. Okay, anyway, my 2 that came to mind. I personally think incorporation of ethnic studies framework should be a green item, in my opinion. I think that's pretty much a given. I just think it's important and a lot of reasons. I don't know if I need to explain them here, but yeah, I'm sure you guys will talk about it. My second thing was more of a question is, does the athletic director have any, even like 1 period, a 0.2 FTE off, or they have 0 time off and they're expected to do all their AD duties during their prep?
Currently, the athletic director has a 0.2, so 1 period, and also a stipend.
Okay.
Other board comments on goal 1? All right, seeing none, are there any public comments on goal 1? Julie, go ahead.
Hi, and Nick, I sent you an email. I apologize. I didn't
Oh.
make the LCAP meeting on
Good.
Tuesday. I just wanted to comment that I fully support funding the 50% for the VPs. I think going forward, I was kind of shocked to see that a month or so ago, and that was in one of the proposed cuts. And I just think it's going to be such a tricky time regardless. And in that same avenue, regarding expanding electives, Lloyd can speak to this also. We were on the Ag Advisory Board, and there was a disconnect between the high school and CA Jacobs, and that's just one program. I'm sure bands, the academies wanted to be able to go over to CA Jacobs and present about that. There's misnomers that, you know, you can't do FFA if you don't have an animal. And I think that that's super important to ramp up the enrollment in the CTE programs at the high school. And I think that maybe that's something that one of the vice principals would be tasked with. So I think, again, just in alignment with that.
Great, thank you, Julie.
Thanks,
Other
Julie.
public comment? All right, let's move on to goal 2.
Can I just, let's not push, but ask, is there anything in this middle column of the yellowish, I guess, that at this point in time, the board would say, nope, we can't do it. It doesn't make sense right now. Or there are must-dos
In the yellow column.
in the yellow column. So going either direction, right? You know, what we're hoping for tonight is to get direction from you. You know, first off, anything you want to dump out of the green column. I don't have that sense from the board at this point in time. So anything in the yellow column, going to go left, that you want us to establish it as one of the highest priorities. Going to go right over to the, you know, now is not the time, or we don't have, you know, we just have other priorities, right? And, you know, maybe a little bit of detail on some of these would be helpful, okay? So our district staffing level for math is the same as it is for every other course that's offered in the secondary level. So that's 29-1. And when you take the department averages for the sites, we come in at that level. Part of what happens is sometimes you get a blip in the schedule where you may have 35 kids in a class in first period, and the same class in second period might have 25. And so sometimes class sizes will be larger. The purpose of this is to, of this particular proposal is to try to improve the learning experience for students by having fewer of them in the class at a time. And so you'd be obtaining additional teachers, additional teaching time anyway, periods, to bring the class size down. The research on class size, lower class size is not very friendly to lower class size. There's not a lot of correlation between the lower numbers. I was principal at a time we had 20-to-1 in English and math in 9th grade, which was a great luxury. It didn't make any real difference in our data. I said earlier, as we were talking about this, it's not how many kids in a classroom that we're teaching, it's how you teach them, right? And the difference between 29 and 25, I'm just not sure that is an easy thing to do. So some background there. 4th and 5th grade CSR. Again, we have some classes in the district that are large and some that run small. This is an expensive proposition there to go with that. Tutoring, easy peasy, I think. The question around expanded hours for elementary grades, throughout all of the assistance money coming is the idea of making up for lost instructional time. I don't know how we don't, quite honestly. And we know that the adding days to the calendar is just, it's go nowhere. The idea of, and it may be elementary, this says elementary only. If you added a half hour to the elementary schedule for each day, and you put 15 minutes of that time into the ELA block and 15 minutes of that time into the math block, you could get something done with that time. 4 days a week, you wouldn't do Wednesday. This would require negotiations, but I think all we'd be looking for tonight is saying, work on this. Let's figure out what this would cost, those types of things.
But on the survey, that wasn't real popular.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Would that also affect the times that for pickups for parents and stuff
It
with
would.
their
Yeah.
kids being picked up from elementary school and then from the high school, and it would mess that
There
balance
would be some shifting there.
up? Okay.
So, I think any direction you can give us there. The other ones here, I think, are pretty straightforward. Yeah.
The way I look at it, when I look at the expand tutoring options and expand hours for elementary grades, it makes me think that we might get more buy-in if we expanded tutoring, which, rather than everybody a longer day, because it seems like that's something that you could opt into if we made it available and sort of put our resources there, and more one-on-one instruction, because I think you're right about the class size. There's not really any proof that class size is more effective when it's smaller. And I don't know that in that same way that expanded hours and 15 more minutes of math as a group is going to be more effective than 30 minutes of tutoring for somebody who's really struggling.
I agree with that. I think the tutoring is a better idea.
The issue around tutoring is equity.
Yeah, that's true.
Who can stay? Are all teachers going to be providing it or not? So my students might get it and Caitlin's might not, depending on, are we required to do it? The rationale behind the more time for everybody is just that we would be ensuring, and that kind of runs counter. The idea of equity is give children what they need. And that could be, I could benefit from a half hour of after school tutoring time, but my buddy in the desk next to me who might need the same additional support can't go.
But we could also look into things like, especially if we hit the technology piece harder, look into things like, Zoom tutoring and getting college students to tutor and, do flexible evening hours and morning hours that may be more difficult and more inequitable to expand the school day if there's trouble with picking kids up or schedules or those sorts of things. That might be, another consideration. I like the flexibility that tutoring offers and that sort of more personalized instruction. Other board member thoughts on this? There's a couple of public comments. I'm gonna.
I had just said earlier, but I think ethnic studies framework is just an important element of just becoming a well-rounded citizen. I know that probably aligns more with the goal, the part that says success in a global society, more than necessarily college or career. But it's also most likely free, not necessarily $0, but you know, a lot significantly cheaper than paying for all this other stuff on here. So I just think that that's an important element to a well-rounded education.
Any other board comments? Otherwise, I go back and pick up these two public comments. All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to go on the record, not as a DTA representative, but just as a teacher of math, that I think we could probably find studies both ways as to class size, but I think especially as we're trying to get kids caught up, the ability to give feedback to students in terms of getting feedback to everybody in a classroom is much easier to do it to 25 students than it is to 35. And I think that's something we need to be aware of, both in terms of our social, emotional learning of kids and bonding with our students, but also in terms of giving them feedback in a timely manner. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Ryan, go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback on Kathy because she pretty much said what I was going to say too about it. The other thing to consider with smaller class size, especially now, is, and granted, I know my class size of 6 or 7 and 8 is not going to be the size that a class would be. But even with a smaller class size, the discipline problems have disappeared. Okay, 35 kids in a classroom coming from all different backgrounds. We spend the majority of our time trying to do classroom management. And the smaller the class size, it's a lot easier to do. We haven't had any issues since the kids have been back. And I have, as far as behavior, small things, little chatting here and there, that sort of thing. But I do think it helps you with the rapport. I do think it will help us catch up to close that gap. And I think you get more time to check their work. You know, a lot of times we assign things in class and we're working on math problems, but we can't get to everyone to see if they're really understanding the concepts. And if you have 20, which I have this year, as opposed to 30, it makes a big difference. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Adrienne, go ahead.
Sorry, I was having issues unmuting, and I just want to advocate for increasing the time of instruction during the day as opposed to after school tutoring. And this just is my experience in coming from a district where we invested heavily
Okay, thank you.
Brian, do you want me to keep sharing?
Sure, Nick. Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you. So I'm going to cover goals 2 and 3, which are much shorter than goal 1. And goal 2 really boils down to that social emotional behavioral learning, keeping kids safe and healthy, and having those positive environments at the sites. So you've heard about these things to a very large degree in the survey results. In the green, more mental health clinician support. Moving Main Prairie to CHA, we did not have that in the surveys, but it's been universally supported as just the best option that we could do for the students and programs at Main Prairie. Continuing to expand the PBIS program. So this is the overall development of positive school climate and culture that we've been doing for a number of years, but believe we need to emphasize in renewed increased levels here as we bring everyone back. And then obviously we saw the numbers on the suicide prevention programs, that there's huge support. So we don't envision any of those going away in the slightest. Okay. So things that are in this yellow column that are some of these are site-based more than district. So the first example, we have we've had a funky year for sports behind us, with none happening at John Knight, and these abbreviated seasons with not everybody getting to do everything at Dixon High School. So the request comes from the site to fund to help students transition back in and have the programs kind of reignite themselves here coming out of this year. Also from the sites, mentorship buddy programs at both John Knight and Dixon High School. So Link Crew is something that's been around for a long time. Web also a good option. So both that comprehensive middle and high school interested in this. The next one, investing in co and extracurricular programs to enhance community and student experience, and funding some costs for some of the extracurricular clubs and activities. So these vary by site, both in terms of the nature of the activities that would be desired, the scope of participation, the actual costs and needs. I tell you that my feel on this particular one is absolutely, let's find some ways to help, but this would be a great thing to include under the block grant model, right? Where we're not trying to operate something from a central place. The next bullet, increase the behaviorist positions to increase services for students returning to school post-COVID. So it's easy to argue that we did not have enough behavior interventionist positions before COVID, and we just know that there's going to be kids needing more intensive levels of support with behavior assistance. That's different than what a clinician does, although they may be related. So looking to increase staffing there. We'd like to add a school psychologist. We'd really like to try to find one who is bilingual. We're going to see, we're afraid, requests for assessments go through the roof here as we transition back, and kids have new issues that have developed over time. And this one is an easy one, I think. Care Solace is that agency to kind of coordinate and help families, staff members, students access mental health and other services out there. And so we actually, that's an easy one to move to the green, in our opinion, at this time. And the last one is increase access to athletics by purchasing transportation. So we don't see this as something we can actually do with COVID funding, is really the reason why it's in the red. So we have included a budget for athletic transportation over the last 4 or 5 years, I think, after not having it for some time. So the idea of it here in red is not that it should, it's not a value, it's that it should be addressed in another venue. So thoughts on any of these about moving from one category to another, or are we, or do you have something else you'd like to suggest?
So in my opinion, so the number one thing that all of the students and most of the parents have talked about was the mental health. And compared to the last section, the goal one, it's not even close to as much. So in my opinion, we should definitely consider moving a lot of the yellows over to the green and really be proactive about this. And also the psychologist is a very good idea. And I think we could pair that with the on-campus like room to cool down, where the psychologist could either like use that as their office and office space or something like that. It would have to go down in the contracts, but I don't know how that works. But I think that having that space mixed with a trained and true psychologist will help a lot of people. So we need to get that over to the green.
And I think that in the green, the PBIF program really incorporating the kind of the reducing the adversarial kind of discipline. And that's the whole point of this, that it's positive rather than, muscle up. And I think the more that we beef that up, it will, your room could be part of that.
Yeah, I agree.
I would just take a moment to point out, so the rooms exist or are, underway. They're called wellness centers. We had them going at the elementaries. They're really not going to take off at the secondary sites. We've pursued grant funding to help make those happen. And so the spaces either already exist or being determined where they will operate in the fall. So that's the good news.
Brian, can I jump in? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please, sorry.
Yeah. So Lucas, when you said this earlier, I was like, yeah, we actually, at the secondary sites, our students haven't had access to them, but those rooms are designated. There's furniture in those rooms. We have supplies in those rooms. They are ready to go and be available to our students in the fall of this upcoming school year. So every site has a wellness center where students can come, they can decompress, they can receive counseling services. It's exactly as Lucas described.
That's awesome. And I think we need to spend some time advertising for that too, because I don't think a lot of people know that that exists. So we need to figure out ways to make that public.
Absolutely. So that will definitely be something at our elementary level. When we open them, we had a grand opening. And so we will have something like that at our secondary sites when we fully open in the fall.
Perfect.
Great. And I think one concern for me is that I don't see on here in any of the columns something about training staff, about professional development for staff on caring. And we've asked kids if they feel like they can identify a staff member. Lots of them have said yes.
Yep.
The staff has asked for it in that survey. Can we have extra training? And that's a green column one for me. I mean,
I agree.
so I'd like to see us.
Catlin, that was an oversight by me. I apologize. That was one that should be in there.
Okay, yeah, I was just surprised. I was like, gosh, it was so evident on all the other stuff. I'm surprised it's not here. So yeah, great. Okay, perfect. All right, there it goes, being added as we speak. Great. Any other board comments on this item? Thoughts from anybody else?
I don't know if you can see me. I'm raising my manual hand or not. Is that good or not? Does that work?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I like what Jules said about PBIS stuff. I would just say that Link Crew, well, PBIS in general is, let's give all this support to everyone and then let the people that fall through those cracks kind of get more support. And I think that Link Crew program, I've been at a site that has a really successful Link Crew program. It really captures a lot of people. It fits hand in glove, I think, with the PBIS program, that it will catch a lot of kids and connect them to people and peers really well. So I think Link Crew is nearly a green column item for me. Something that just came to mind when I was kind of reading about, I see a behaviorist and psychologist, something that came to my mind. You can let me know if this doesn't fit here or it already exists. I was thinking of some sort of a community liaison, almost like per site, or maybe an elementary and a secondary person, something that really reaches out to the kids who are, they have lacking attendance or falling grades or whatever, and whatever it may be, and sort of just recapture them and bring them back into the fold. Then they can come to school and access these resources that we're spending this money on, that the structures are all great for. So I don't know if there's, like I said, something already exists or what that would look like.
Yeah, thanks, TJ. Let me just respond. Up in goal 1, in the first page of it, academic counselor for at promise youth. So that's a concept for grades 6 through 10, probably. Is the idea of kind of doing exactly what you were talking about, of identifying the students. There's a shift in terminology here. They're not at risk, they're at promise, right? So a more positive frame of where those kids are. So that's one example of a possible way. The parent liaison positions also should be helpful in working with parents and helping parents connect, whether to the principal or the assistant principal or school counselor as they exist at whatever site we're talking about. So that touches at least to some degree on what you were suggesting there.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Any other board questions, comments? All right, again, any other public comments on this item? All right, let's go on to item number 3.
Okay, so this is to our engagement goal, getting our families and the community actually partnering up with us and for the benefit of our kids. And this is our scrawniest goal by a whole bunch. And it always has been, and I'm not sure why, but obviously we have a concern going at this point in time, a heightened concern about reconnecting families to school. So we have many not engaged with us. We have a year of not having business as usual. And for some of those families, it's going on well beyond the year of children not being on campus. So the first bullet there in the green, it appeared up top as well, was revitalizing that C.A. Jacobs campus to make it a hub for us, both to house the alternative ed program, but also as a place to support. You can see some of those community-based groups, City of Dixon, whomever it may be. So, and I'd remind you that with some of the funding that's coming, you can invest that in facility expenditures. And that's really what we see happening there to support that. We don't have other funding to do that. Oh, I think, Nick, I just saw your professional development for all staff and social emotional learning strategies and culturally responsive practices. That might have been the goal 2 place. The more places it shows up.
That makes me feel better.
Yes. Yeah, you didn't forget it. You just misplaced it, right? Fine distinction. And the idea, and we've had our equity task force going, and I think the idea of the culturally responsive schools is one that is coming out of that task force work, as well as just our general work as well. So it's not just about ethnic studies. It's actually about building school and district culture that honors the culture of our students and families, and supports all of them in our world here. This yellow one it's new, and as we've been talking about it, we feel it's pretty important. We do not do a great job of our outreach to our community. We don't do a great job of making partnerships. We don't do a good job of our marketing and public relations. And especially here as we get back into business, we think it's really important that we devote time and resources to that. So there's various ways that we could look at doing this, creating a position, contracting out for services. I would include our website and social media focus in here. But we think we just need to invest more than we have in this whole area. Again, with the idea of engaging people with us more successfully and long term. So, and then the last one here is increasing the time for our parent liaisons, who are currently at most sites 3 hours a day. And sites can, at least one site has added some time to their liaison position with some site funding. So that's goal 3, easy to review.
All right, are there board comments, thoughts?
Well, yeah, because I think there's so many good things happening in Dixon. And one of the reasons that it's kind of the best kept secret about our graduation rates, how well our students do, after they leave our schools. And I heartily agree with the first yellow, that we really need somebody that incorporates all of what we do into our website, into our, you know, and into making partnerships with businesses. And, you know, and it'd be a great thing about not just for career planning too. You know, we have now lots of big businesses and small businesses, and just letting kids know about this, what exists besides fast food.
Okay. Other thoughts, other board member thoughts?
I think that was a good point, Jewel. I think that for the things that came to my mind while you were talking, one was, I remember when we toured John Knight Middle School gym, and Brian and I joked, like, there was a giant like Pepsi logo on the scoreboard that was like super old. And we were like, man, that would be nice to have like a local sponsor up there, you know, and build a community bridge there. That would be really cool. So I visualized that. I also visualized like someone operating the social media and the community outreach. And like honestly, I know that you guys do a great job of posting the weekly letters, but if like someone were to like leave a genuine comment on there, I have no idea whose responsibility it is to like respond to it. And they probably have a million other things to do. So I think it'd be really cool if we had a, you know, a social media liaison that kind of fit within that, what you're describing right there, public relations.
And just add real quickly, another component, and again, this is really a very new conversation around this. You know, you find a lot of districts right now are embedding the idea of innovation in some of their staffing positions. And if we're in a period of time where we're gonna get a dual immersion program up off the ground, right, and a non-classroom based program that like we talked about earlier, here's 60% or so based on just kind of a cold call question, not knowing you know, how much more support and the partnership piece to support, you know, to engage with those programs might we be able to have. So it feels like that's a component that we could embed in here potentially if you're interested in us pursuing this.
Catlin, this is
Yeah.
Lloyd.
Yeah. go ahead, Lloyd.
Let's make that 3 board members. I agree with Jewel and DJ that the district should consider moving that first yellow into the green. I just think that's it. It goes with what we believe in, I think, and what needs to be done. And so I would support moving that into the green.
Okay.
Thank you.
I definitely think that having marketing be very important in the district, and social media is huge. If we have a social media presence, we can reach new students. I know you always talk about outreach and bringing in new students. So having a new student say, hey, I want to go to Dixon, and then show their parents at the like Instagram page or Facebook page and say, see, here it is, and then see a good culture, it'll bring a lot of students in. So I think we should put it in the green also.
And I'm not trying to be a wet blanket on this, because I not only think it should be in the green, I think, you know, Julie's on this call too. I mean, some of us have been asking
Oh,
for
sure.
this, and it, you know, whether it was a, you know, video series we were going to do, whether it was a website update we were going to do, whether, you know, it was more increased social media, whether it was pushing out more increased social media. So, you know, I also want it in the green, but I'm also honestly, I'm a little skeptical about our ability to pull this off. So I think I need more information and to believe that this is something we can really pull off.
We do too. Yeah. We don't know. I mean, this is a concept at this point in time. Yeah, couldn't spell it out as to exactly what it would look like. Just you know, gauging the room here that there's board interest in us looking into this. But Catlin, your point is really well noted of what does this actually look like? What will it get done?
Yep. Okay, is there any public comment on this? I do not see any raised hands on this section. Okay. And that is at the end of our goal tracker, just the three?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna toss it back to you guys then to wrap up.
Yeah, and Nick, feel free to pipe in here. So I think we got some clarity from you on a few of our areas. Nick, maybe if you don't mind talking about LCAP, where things stand with the LCAP advisory and development, and how we how this work that we're currently engaged in, is married into that as well.
Yeah, sure. So, there were other, I think it's worth noting that in some of the conversations that we've had, there are other sort of proposals out of the COVID world that did not see the light of day today. And that's not because we're trying to hide them or anything like that, but these were the items that we really felt like linked to what is appropriately in an LCAP. So as an example, maybe something's a facilities recommendation, and that's not something that we really feel, while certainly valid, is not something that would belong in LCAP. So I just wanted to call that out. So a lot of the ideas that surfaced here tonight, and in fact, some of the direct language was items that came from our LCAP advisory group. The board will get a presentation for them at the second board meeting in May to discuss their process. Trustees Fink and McCabe are both on that committee and do a great job for us, as are a number of the people here in the audience. What we looked at with that group was where could we see some commonalities between what at the time our management team was recommending, what we were hearing from staff, and what we were hearing from LCAP advisory. And there's actually, certainly there are, we all have a different lens, but there's actually a fair amount of consistency around some of the major items that we need. So next steps really with these pieces is with your blessing here, these green pieces really start to go into the LCAP as actions and services that we'll do. And some of the other ones as well, I think are based on some of the conversations, I think are things that we need to look at. The LCAP is going to be will be up for a public hearing at the first board meeting in June. So prior to that, of course, the board will have a draft copy of that document, as will the community, to be able to offer input on that document. So Brian, I don't know if that's the kind of update you were looking for. I'm happy to provide more detail.
No, I think that helps, Nick. Yeah. So all that said, we'll be back next week for a regular meeting with some updates on this. We'd like to start that we've got some clear direction, especially on these green elements. So intervention teachers in the elementary world, 2 of the 3 sites asked for increases in their current staffing. So now it's a matter of, okay, let's look at those requests and how do they make sense or not? What we'll look at there. I really hope that we will bring to you our suggested block grant approach, right? So that we can see that, and then we'll also be able to say, hey, all of these things are going to be handled in the block grant, so we can kind of take them off our plate right now and focus on the bigger picture things. So we will be back next week with more on this. Budget development and LCAP development are moving very quickly. We're running up against the calendar on those issues, but we'll keep coming back to you every week. Okay.
Great. All right. Well, that is the only item on our agenda for this evening. So our next board meeting, as Brian mentioned, will be May 6th, and we will not yet be back in.
No, as of right now, they're still having a meeting at the city council chambers. So if that changes, we will be there.
Okay. Yep. Great. Otherwise, we will be in this format again on May 6th, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.